Of honor has arrived. How are you, Controller? Good to see you. Always good to see you. Thank you. So listen, I want to welcome. I'm ready to take this and go to City Hall with this. Hold on. So my name is Robert Cordero. I'm the CEO of Grand Street Settlement. I want to welcome you to your community center in the Lower East Side. It's so good to see some of my colleagues, Melissa from University Settlement, and so many others, Tariq from Darrell, and others. Thank you for supporting us. So listen, this is unfortunate to have to rally around the issues that we're going to be talking about today, but the opposite of unfortunate is we are very fortunate to have a leader like Controller Brad Landers that cares about this issue, that is prioritizing this issue in the Controller's office and with city government and working to hold the mayor and the city accountable to its commitments. I'm not even talking about going extra, about its commitments, right? And we all know that a budget is a reflection of our values. So do we value childcare that's affordable in New York City, or do we not? I talk with my hands, so this is dangerous over here. Well, with the cuts to universal to U3K, with the planned closure of 5 child and family centers, including ours in Bushwick at 319 Stanhope, for no good reason other than attempting to relieve the city of commitments around real estate, makes absolutely no sense. So I'm happy to host a rally. When I got the call from your office, from Laura, we said, when do you want to do it? Let's do this. So we obviously have a major affordability crisis in the city. Remember years ago, the rent's too damn high? The child care's too damn high. Sure. And I'm sorry, I know we got babies in the room, but my kids, hi. My kids are used to this. My kids did UPK. My kids came to Grand Street's Universal Pre-K here at Seward Park. I'm a believer in this. I'm a Head Start kid. Most of my staff benefited from the Head Start program, benefited from childcare in the city. And so now we're seeing an unraveling of those priorities and those commitments. Childcare is unaffordable not just for families, but for providers like Grand Street Settlement, like Nuestros Niños. I'm sure, I don't want to speak for university, but right, it's extremely expensive to find the space, secure the space, and then to pay wages, and then to fight with the city to make sure that wages are livable for our teachers and for our staff. We need universal childcare solutions like the ones that Controller Landers is proposing. We need fair wages for our teachers and our staff. We need tax credits, not just for corporations, but for families. That's right. We need the child care tax credit. We need to support providers, and this you know from me, we need to streamline regulations. Sounds very, but I know it's something that you love, right? Is figuring out a way to make it easier for childcare providers like Grand Street with 109 years of experience in childcare. We're not even the one with the most. Over here at the end of the room with Melissa and University, the first settlement house in the city. We've always provided childcare from the beginning. And in 1968, when we received funds through President Johnson's War on Poverty, we were one of the first recipients at that time for Head Start. So what we're seeing now is the potential unraveling of the federal Head Start program with the new administration in Washington. And then at the local level, a city that is supposed to care about providing opportunity for the neediest among us withdraw that commitment. So it's vital that our parents have access to quality childcare, and we can't lose essential local providers. We're grateful to you for your focus in making universal childcare a reality for New York families. And with that, I am so proud to introduce Controller Brad Landers. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Robert. What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we need? When do we need it? Thank you all very much for being here this morning. Robert, thank you for hosting us. Grand Street Settlement is a remarkable place, founded over a century ago in 1916. At a time when some of the great industrialists and philanthropists of the age thought it was important to help immigrant families actually become Americans, get to work, have stable lives, Grand Street Settlement got started. And here it is more than 100 years later with an extraordinary tradition, stepping up to become one of the first places to do Head Start. And now, look at this great staff. If you're a child care provider, will you just raise your hand so we could say thank you to you guys? We talk a lot, and we're going to talk today about the challenges facing parents and working families and the desperate struggle to afford child care in this expensive city. But I'm glad today that we're really also centering and talking about and honoring the work of our child care workers. In this spotlight I'm going to talk about in a few minutes that we did last month, we found that child care workers are the lowest paid care workers of anyone in care work. And how insane is that to have the people who take care of our babies, who teach our kids, who are their first early childhood educators, be paid so poorly that they can't afford child care or housing themselves. So thank you, Grand Street Settlement and Nuestros Niños and University Settlement and everyone else who is here this morning who's a critical part of our child care infrastructure. Okay. So you might remember that just 2 weeks ago, I know it seems like an eternity ago, in his State of the City, Mayor Adams said that he was going to make New York City the best place to raise a family in America. But it seems like maybe at Mar-a-Lago or at the inauguration or while talking to Tucker Carlson, he may have gotten distracted in his priorities because his budget and his actions are making it a worse place to raise a family. And that is insane. It makes no sense at all to cut $300 million from New York City's budget. We're not talking about getting childcare to any new families. We're talking about cuts that will close childcare centers, take away 3K slots, take away pre-K slots, take away special education early childcare slots from thousands of New York's working families. And we're not going to stand for it, are we? No. So we're going to talk this morning both about the need families have for childcare and about the challenges that centers themselves are facing. To get started, last week we put out this report on childcare affordability, which really just digs in on the challenges families are facing. So it now costs a family, on average, some people pay much more than this, $23,400 a year to pay for childcare. That's substantially more than CUNY tuition. So it costs more to send your kid to childcare than it costs to send them to college, and that is insane. Of course, it means that low-income working families, if you're a child care provider being paid only $25,000 a year, your whole salary would have to go to pay for child care for your own kid. But at that price, it also is a crushing blow to middle-class families and working-class families as well, which is why so many of them are leaving the city. One thing we found is that between 2020 and 2023, the population of children under 3 in New York City declined by 19%. Is that crazy, Rue? I think so. And we see it as especially young families and young working families who are leaving the city. Now, of course, there's a lot of other expenses those families have. Housing is expensive, energy is expensive, transportation is expensive. But childcare is something that New York has in the palms of our hands to provide to those exact families. And we know because we have already been doing it. moving to universal pre-K and expanding 3K has been a lifeline for hundreds of thousands of New York's working families who all of a sudden don't have to spend $25,000 a year on childcare, get their kids in loving, nourishing environments where they see them start to grow and learn and thrive. That's what keeps families here, makes them excited to be New Yorkers, gets them connected to their neighborhoods and their institutions, and makes it possible, rather than saying, you know what, I can't afford the cost of the rent, so I'm gonna move somewhere. You say, you know what, I have a free childcare slot when my kid is 3 and 4. It's good for me to stay in New York City. That's what it would look like to make New York the best city in America to raise a family. And that is not cutting $300 million from the child care budget. But that's what Mayor Adams is doing in his preliminary budget. That figure includes about $250 million that is needed in the FY26 budget to cover universal pre-K and 3K. We've made this promise to families, but we are breaking it. That's what it would mean to keep these 5 daycare centers open. And I want to stick here a minute. You know, we're at Grand Street Settlement at their Pitt Street location. At their Bushwick location, that's one of the 5 centers, along with Nuestros Niños, that learned, and barely learned, you know, that was sideswiped with a closure notice last week. And I just learned this morning from Robert that in some cases, they only learned that they were facing a closure for next year when they went online with existing families who have slots this year to sign up for next year's slots. And they weren't able to do so because those programs didn't exist on the portal. And they called to ask why, and we're told we're closing your program. And let's be clear, closing those 5 centers, cutting this money from universal pre-K, from 3K, and from special education early childhood services, it would mean that something north of 10,000 families who have child care this year would not have it next year. And New Yorkers are not going to stand for that, are we? No. So what we're going to do today is hear from some of those New Yorkers, some of them about their need for child care, some of them about their centers and their work. Oh, one more thing. I guess I do want to make sure I lift up the special education cuts, which are about $55 million of the $300 million. People have rightly heard a lot about the broken promises on 3K. We said we'd get 3K for all, but people from my dental hygienist to many of you, I'll tell you that story sometime. She was not happy. It's not good to have an angry dental hygienist. I'm telling you, it's not. Who were promised 3K and the promise was broken. This will make that even worse next year. And cuts to pre-K and of course these centers. But to cut $55 million out of mandated special education, early childhood education, required by law, a commitment the mayor has made and knows is necessary, but that often New Yorkers don't see themselves. It's not necessarily what is featured as the kind of story that we tell. But those are kids who, if you get them into special education, early childhood, can start to learn and grow and thrive. And when you don't provide it, you are both consigning those families and those kids to a lack of care that's what they need to start to connect and learn and grow, but also failing to meet New York's legal obligations under the law. So we're focused on those today as well, and you are going to hear about all of it. I want to start by introducing Nora Moran, the Director of Policy. Oh, wait, hang on one sec. We have an elected official here, so I'm going to invite, and he's both an elected official and an early childhood educator, so he's like a twofer in his life. So I'm going to ask State Senator Jabari Brisport to come up. Jabari has been a true champion for free universal child care, fighting for it at the state level alongside a lot of the advocates here today, someone who's given a big part of his own life to education and the growth of young people, and we're honored today to be joined by State Senator Jabari Brisport.
Thank you, Comptroller. Thank you. And in addition to thanking the Comptroller, I want to thank you, Robert, and thank you everyone at Grand Street Settlement for hosting this today. It is an unfortunate reason we have to be here, but it's a necessary reason. Again, I'm State Senator Jabari Brisport. I am the chair of the Committee on Children and Families in the State Senate, and I have the privilege and honor of carrying the Universal Child Care Act in the state legislature, which would guarantee free child care to all parents regardless of work status or immigration status, and also mandate that child care workers be paid like teachers, because child care is education and child care workers are teachers. I know that when, you can clap for that, sure, yeah. I just want to say I'm going to thank the comptroller for putting these statistics here, and you can see here what the median wage or salary or income for a child care worker is. I do want to say when I was a public school teacher, I walked in day one making a salary of 60 to 70K. And again, child care is education. The majority of your brain is formed by the time you are 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, and these are some of the most important years. So it's important we push for universal child care because we need more child care, not less. And regarding these cuts from this current administration, they are just so dirty. I don't represent the Bushwick location. I represent one of the Clinton Hill locations, the Fort Greene Council location, where the mayoral administration let me know was closing after they had already made the decision and after they were already removing it from the system. This is not the first time they have done things like this. I went back and forth with the mayoral administration over an intended closure of another child care facility in Ocean Hill, Brownsville, called the Shirley Chisholm Daycare Center a few years ago. And they really abuse statistics and in this administration. So they came to us saying they needed to consolidate because the daycare centers were half enrolled. They were like, it's half enrolled, it's half enrolled. And I'm pulling my hair out trying to figure out how these daycare centers are half enrolled when there's so much need from parents for childcare in the area. And it took them months, the DOE, to admit that the daycare centers were half staffed. So it's not an issue of the parents not wanting childcare, it's empty classrooms because they don't have the staff to fill them. And so when they called me about the Fort Greene Council last week, the first thing I asked is, did you check the staffing? They said they'd get back to me. You think they got back to me? No. You think they got back to me? No. We do not even have, thank you again for these are really the two issues. We do not even have the current capacity to meet the number of families that are eligible for childcare. But even within our undercapacity, we still have empty classrooms because childcare providers are not getting paid enough. And we have a mayoral administration that would rather abuse statistics and say we're closing things down because of under-enrollment. We're closing things down because of under-enrollment because they don't want to pay the rent and they don't want to pay the workers. And that is so vile because they campaigned on universal child care. They said this was something that matters to them, and now they're hiding behind their abuse of numbers to take things away that we all need. So you have me as a partner. I want to thank the comptroller for holding this rally. We're going to be fighting. We're fighting for higher wages and more capacity at the state level. We'll have, you have a partner to be fighting for this at the city level, and let's make sure we get budgets at the state and city level that work for everybody, especially all child care workers and all parents. Thank you so much.
Hear, hear. Thank you so much for coming, Jabari. And, you know, I'll just add one more thing about these leases. You know, the administration has said that it has something to do with the leases, but, you know, this is an administration that is amidst investigations into corruption in its leasing program. So I think they should get their house in order before they come for anybody else's house. Okay, I mentioned that we're here at Grand Street Settlement, which was founded over 100 years ago and is one of a great network of settlement houses in New York City, an extraordinary tradition of providing child care and supporting immigrant families and making New York, New York by bringing people along. And they have a wonderful coalition, United Neighborhood Houses, and I'm pleased to ask Nora Moran, their Director of Policy and Advocacy, to come address us. So, thank you.
All right, hi everybody. My name is Nora Moran, and yes, I'm having a baby any day now, and filling out my son's 3K application, so I'm a little stressed nowadays. But during my day job, I'm the Director of Policy and Advocacy at United Neighborhood Houses. We represent New York City settlement houses. They are in all 5 boroughs. They're doing all sorts of community-based work. Really excited to be here today at Grand Street, to also be here with our members, University Settlement, Chinese American Planning Council, Center for Family Life, and Sunset Park, all childcare providers, all very concerned with preserving this crucial resource for families. Over a century ago, as Robert and Comptroller Lander mentioned, settlement houses started some of the first childcare programs in the country. And they did this because they recognized it's good for kids, it's good for their parents, and it's good for neighborhoods when we have safe, free places for children to go, to learn, to develop, supports parents who can then go to work and focus on their careers. The benefits are all really well documented. And I want to thank Comptroller Lander for putting out a really wonderful report that details all of the statistics that we know to be true, but sometimes it's just great to see it in writing, particularly when it comes to how much a family would need to earn in order to just afford childcare in New York City. I think it was something like 10 minimum wage jobs, which is just insane when you really think about it. It's really unfathomable that after we have all of this research, right? I feel like every other day I'm reading in the paper about how elected officials are talking about childcare, about how important childcare is. It was one of the things that came out of the pandemic that everyone really realized is an important resource for parents. That after giving an entire speech about how he wants to make New York City one of the best places to raise a family, Mayor Adams is leaving out hundreds of millions of dollars from his budget for early childhood education. 3K, Promise NYC, special education services that are legally mandated, all don't have enough money for next year. And that leaves parents really stressed. It leaves providers wondering, what do I do if I have to lay my staff off? What do I tell families who rely on me for services and rely on me to make their days just work, in order to be able to kind of get through? And it's really it's very hard to wrap our minds around. And there's also no reason to believe that demand is going down, right? In fact, right now, because in last year's budget there was funding for outreach, there are childcare programs and providers and outreach teams reaching out to families, helping them apply for care, making sure that they know what their options are. And so if we're doing that outreach work, but we're simultaneously saying we're not going to have as many seats next year, I don't know how we reconcile both of those things. So overall, we would just say, parents and providers really do not deserve to be a part of a budget dance again this year. It's stressful. No one wants to go through that. We really hope that Mayor Adams comes to his senses and whenever, at least by his executive budget, but even today or tomorrow, he comes out and says, maybe it just was a mistake. Let's assume good faith intentions in everybody here. But to restore that funding, to reverse the closures for the centers in Brooklyn that, again, families are relying on, and that in many, many, many cases, I think all of them, are fully enrolled and have lots of students there. And make sure that we're preserving childcare for families right now and thinking about expanding the system, right? We see right here that just 29% of infants and toddlers are eligible on the basis of income, receive subsidized childcare. Then there's also families who fall above that threshold and are left with no options. And so it's really important to make sure we're aging the system down, preserving what we have, and sending a message to families that you belong here and we want you to stay here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nora. We're going to make sure we have those options in place by the time you need them. And that actually brings me to our next speaker. What we're focused on today is this $300 million in cuts that would take us backwards, more than 10,000 seats, close centers, eliminate 3K slots, eliminate special education pre-K. But even at the baseline that we have this year, we're so far from what families need. Only 29% of income eligible infants and toddlers receive care. That's just 31,000 out of 108,000. That means, we need 70,000 more slots just to have sufficient slots for infants and toddlers who are income eligible to provide a full system. That would mean, you could get your kid into free childcare, when you need it, starting, when you've got to go back to work, continuing as they're 2, 3, 4. And let's not forget that most of those programs now end at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but people's jobs don't end at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we need a system of genuinely universal childcare that makes it possible for families to thrive. And luckily, there is a campaign, New Yorkers United for Childcare, that is fighting for just that statewide, free, high quality, adequately paid, universal child care that will actually make New York one of the best places to raise a family. And we're so grateful, Rebecca Balin, that you are leading that campaign.
Thank you, Controller.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, because this sign needs to be shown. And I'm going to do this. Hi, I'm Rebecca Balin, Executive Director of New Yorkers United for Childcare. We organize parents and would-be parents and people like me who are pregnant and need it very badly for universal childcare. And first I want to say, again, repeat what's been said, but this report is so badly needed. The Comptroller's Office report outlines new facts and new data that we didn't even know that really highlights how difficult it is to afford childcare in this city. And we are so lucky to have fighters on the city level and the state level in Comptroller Brad Lander and State Senator Jabari. And so while we build that power and political power of parents, we are going to back them up and make sure that they have the constituencies who are organized to fight. And Comptroller Lander's report lays it out perfectly. It costs a family $334,000. A family needs to make, $334,000 a year to afford childcare for their 2-year-old. That's really high. That is really high. And so no wonder we are losing middle and working class families en masse in this city. They are going to other states like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, where the cost of living overall has declined, is lower than it is here. Where you can have 2 kids, where you can afford a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom. And what's weird is that despite this is the issue that everybody's talking about, and yet the mayor, he's in a deep affordability crisis. This mayor isn't expanding the universal child care in the form of pre-K and 3K that we know works, that families really love and need. He's not expanding that to more hours of the day. He's not expanding the pilot program for full day, full year. He's not expanding it to include more children, like our campaign for 2Care. Instead, he is making cuts that are putting those 3K seats at risk and closing entire programs altogether. It's insanity. But luckily, we have a plan. New Yorkers United for Childcare has a plan, and as this Comptroller report points out, we know what works. 3K and pre-K have kept families in New York. It has helped women stay in the workforce, and as this report lays out, universal childcare is the answer to continue that, to retain the diversity of New York City, to help women stay in the workforce and be productive. And we don't have another option. You know, you could make the argument, I wouldn't, but you could make the argument that college isn't a necessity. But parents do not have a choice. So they're spending that money either way, and they might be spending entire salaries, half their salaries, like most New Yorkers, I would argue, and they're not saving, or they're making major sacrifices. They're not paying for medical care, or they're going into debt, or again, they are leaving New York City and state entirely. And so, as Nora said, if we want to make a statement that we want families here, and this is a city not just for the very wealthy, we need universal child care now, and urgently, we need to be expanding, not cutting, 3K and pre-K, and that's what we'll be working on together with the Comptroller and Senator and all of the advocates here. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. One other stat I was struck by in the report that we released last week on the benefits of universal child care are just how much it brings into the economy. We estimate that the disposable income of families could grow by as much as $2 billion due to the provision of universal child care. And remember, it's a twofer. You both save the money you would otherwise have to spend on child care and get more flexibility to work so you can earn more money. And employers would themselves also gain as much as $900 million annually from lower turnover and absenteeism. Talk to any employer about what keeps their employees out absent, and so often it is child care, lack of child care. So this is a win-win for families, for our providers, but also for the city's economy. I mentioned earlier the importance of paying attention to those special education early childhood services. We've done a lot of research in the Controller's office as well. You know, we have so many New Yorkers who have different kinds of disabilities and special needs, and making it a city that's accessible to all of them is part of what helps the whole city flourish and thrive. That's true in making the subways or the schools accessible, because if they're accessible to people with physical disabilities, they become accessible to parents with strollers, but it is true in our early childhood education as well. So I am delighted that we have Betty Baez-Mello, the Early Childhood Education Project Director from Advocates for Children in New York, here to talk to us. Thank you. Thanks, Betty.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone. My name is Betty Baez-Mello, and I'm the Director of Early Childhood Education at Advocates for Children of New York. Thank you, Comptroller, for the opportunity to speak here today on the importance of early childhood education programs for New York City children and their families. We were greatly disheartened that the mayor's preliminary budget fails to include funding for programs that families rely on to support the learning and development of young children before they start elementary school. It's well understood that I know, very important. It is well understood that the first 5 years of a child's life are crucial to their development and future educational success. However, the mayor's preliminary budget would limit access to these early childhood education programs to some of New York's most vulnerable families, including low-income families, children from immigrant families, and also children with disabilities. At AFC, we work with families every day who are trying to get preschool placements and services in place for their children. Many of these families have young children with disabilities. After waiting for months to get their child evaluated and found eligible for preschool special education services, they're being told that there are no speech therapists available to go to their child's preschool to help them with communication. They're being told that there are no seats available in the special education classrooms that their child needs in order to learn. These families feel helpless as they see their child being sent home from school early for misbehaving because they can't express themselves. They feel helpless having their child with significant disabilities sit at home, watching them fall further behind their peers. These families are working with them to try to work on their development, but they're not educators. They're doing this while they're juggling, waiting for a seat, trying to keep their job and care for their other children. Unfortunately, we know that there are thousands of families just like them who have children with disabilities who aren't getting the services they need and have a legal right to receive. The mayor has promised to make this a city that is the best place to raise a family. But the budget proposal could result in a cut to thousands of 3K seats, the loss of hundreds of new preschool special education classrooms, and thousands of preschoolers with disabilities continuing to go without the supports and services that they need. We're asking the city to restore funding for 3K, for Promise NYC, and for preschool special education classes, and to ensure that all children, regardless of disability, of their immigrant status, have early childhood education programs and services that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Betty. Betty mentioned Promise NYC, which I want to make sure to underline because we haven't talked about it yet. This year, the city is spending $25 million on this program, Promise NYC, which is providing child care for asylum seekers and immigrant families, working families. The mayor's talked a lot about wanting families who are here to get work authorizations and go out and do the work New Yorkers need. And you know what they need if they have children, if they're going to work? Is child care, but they aren't eligible for many of New York City's programs. So the City Council advocated for, council members Tiffany Caban and Shahana Hanif, and I pushed for a couple years ago the creation of this program, Promise NYC, which the mayor has opposed every year. The council has, at the end of the negotiation, put the money in the budget. It has grown to provide several hundred child care slots to working immigrant families, and this budget rips the rug out from under them, cuts the $25 million, would eliminate that program, and just puts the lie to the idea that New York is trying to help those families get to work so they can move out of shelter and into stable housing. Part of what we're fighting for in the $300 million is to restore, not just restore that $25 million and grow it as well. So Betty, thank you very much for mentioning that. All right, two more speakers. Our next speaker is Greg Brender, the Chief Policy and Innovation Officer of the Daycare Council of New York, and a longtime friend and advocate on these issues.
Thank you to Controller, to Senator Brisport, our state universal child care champion, Robert, and so many people here, especially all the members of the early childhood workforce. At every level, teachers, cooks, janitors, support staff, directors, providers in in-home programs, the early childhood workforce is underpaid, undervalued, and underappreciated. Early childhood educators, early childhood providers, support staff directors, they are the people who kept New York running during the height of the pandemic, and more importantly, allowed us to reopen. When we talk about refilling our skyscrapers with people who are working in New York City, they can only work because there are hardworking people, hard and talented people who are providing high quality early childhood education that not only keeps kids safe, that not only keeps kids nurtured, but helps them grow, learn, socialize, and become strong adults. And forever, it seems, we have underpaid this workforce, and we have undervalued, and we have not respected a workforce that, and I don't think it's a coincidence, it's a workforce that's mostly women, and particularly here in New York City, women of color, that this workforce is so underpaid. Right now, we are looking at a budget in New York City. The budget fight has started. Mayor Adams has given both his preliminary budget and his State of the City address in front of a banner saying, making New York City the best place to raise a family. And yet we're looking at a budget that cuts severely into early childhood education. It does not address the underpayment of the early childhood workforce. It makes significant cuts to 3K. It eliminates the Promise NYC program, the School Day Plus program, which has been an innovative model that has allowed more extended day options that we know families need. And we're also looking at a situation where there are multiple centers, including Grand Street Settlement site on Stanhope Street, where there are these sudden closures, where programs that communities are depending on, that families are depending on, are facing closure. This is disrespectful to the families, and it's disrespectful to the hardworking women and men who make these programs such a success every day. And I actually wonder, can we pull this sign up here? I just want to highlight this sign. Centers are doing so much to make sure their programs are enrolled. Child care centers are reaching out to their communities, and they are often fighting policies that the city itself has set that make it harder for families to enroll. What we need to be doing now is not cutting centers, not cutting jobs, making sure programs are open. We need to be making sure that families, when they're looking for childcare, that they can find the high quality early childhood education programs we know they want, we know they need, and that the people behind me here today work so hard and bring so much talent and education and passion to make a success for New York's families. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you to our great elected leaders and all of you for being part of this fight. It's so important that in this budget and in the future, we really make the investments in early childhood education and especially in early childhood educators. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Greg, for calling our attention back to the folks doing the work. Really critical. And last but most certainly not least, the public advocate of the City of New York has been a tremendous partner in this fight. As many of you know, because you see him with his little one, childcare is on his mind a lot these days. And when he's got his younger daughter with him, it's usually not because he's like using her as a prop, but because childcare was not available at the time. And so we are delighted to be joined by Deputy Public Advocate Elizabeth Kennedy, who's Deputy Public Advocate for Education and Opportunity.
Thank you, everyone. So much of what we need has already been said. We know what we need. My name is Elizabeth Kennedy, she, her, aya pronouns, and I'm proud to be here alongside the comptroller, Senator Brisport, so many advocates and childcare providers, and our babies that are here saying exactly what we need. The thing is, we've always known what we need. We know it from every part of our communities. I think this is a presser that had on the most pregnant people here representing both government, providers, as well as advocates. And we know this for a very long time. Why? Because our providers, the core of our communities, are excellent at what they do. It has helped us build the city that we want and what we need and what we deserve. They have paved the way alongside working with our families to know exactly what the vision looks like. And it looks like, no matter the cold out there and the coldness of this budget from this mayor and this administration, the warmth that is in this room, the care that is in this room, am I right? And so when we look at that, what is it what we need? I cannot underscore that our providers, majority women of color, immigrant communities, culturally responsive, skilled practitioners that have gone to school, that have decades of experience, that know exactly what children and families need and where to meet them. Community-based organizations have helped not only be the building blocks, but they have been the foundation and the bedrock so that we could even dream of programs like 2Care and 3K and pre-K that is universal. I am here today, yes, as a city employee that helps to think about policy and organizing and advocacy at our public advocate's office that, as the comptroller pointed out, is a father of two, one who is two, and is constantly thinking about daycare because he is living it. But well before that, when we look at reports like the comptroller has put out, like New Yorkers United for Child Care, like many have actually looked at the data, we know that this is an issue that people feel whether they have families or not, right? People feel it at the employer level. They feel it in our public transportation when those folks are not actually able to go pick up their children, or they're losing their jobs to pick up their children. They're feeling it when they know that those centers of our community are under threat. And I think what Senator Brisport pointed out is that what we continue to ask is, what are the real facts here? Because what we're hearing does not match up with what we know in community. When we knew that 3K seats were being pulled, they said as well there was not enrollment. But what we actually knew was that what Daycare Council said, Gregory Brender said, we have innovations to solve this problem. We need to be thinking about extended care. How about weekend care? How about longer hours? How about hours that actually work for working families and immigrants in the city? And so I'm here today. I would also be remiss to say, again, a deep thank you to the comptroller and his leadership here and the team and the providers and the parents that are here. Providers are also parents. They're also caregivers. They are grandmothers and grandparents and aunties and the village themselves at home as well. And so they also deserve quality, affordable childcare. We cannot separate those two. But I'd also be remiss if I did not place us in our current times, not only in this city, but in this country. Childcare centers, daycare centers, education centers are also fortresses for our city. When we hear things like on day one of the Trump administration, a decade-old guidance from ICE looking to be revoked to be able to come on site at daycares, and we know that that guidance is historic and being revoked, but what we do know is that this action has done what many of us were worried about and what they are trying to do to scare us. But what I do know is that this is a room of people that will not back down, that are not scared. Am I also right? And what we do know is that our educators, our providers, our families, our elected officials that are here today, our advocates, are those that know that our childcare centers that are facing closures are actually the ones that are our fortresses of love, of community, of care, and that we will protect every New Yorker, every person, regardless of immigration status, in our daycares moving forward. And so that begins today. It has already begun with making sure that we are fully funded, making sure that we are investing and dreaming of the vision that's in this room. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Well said.
Thank you. No, it's so good to have be in fellowship with advocates, staff, teachers, our coalition partners, and our elected officials. But at heart, I'm a teacher, and I want to read to you one passage out of our children's book that our 4-year-olds who are in our universal pre-K program wrote with their teachers. We just self-published this and put it out, available at the Tenement Museum down the block, and online soon. But it's called My First Day the Grand Street Way. I'm going to gift you a copy of this, and then you're going to have to come back and read this book to children.
Sure.
So just 2 weeks ago, Governor Hochul came to visit 319 Stanhope, our Bushwick Child and Family Center, to hold that program up as a statewide model for childcare. She read this entire book to a class of children at a childcare center that is fully enrolled. Hold that up, Nilsa, because she's the one that does the enrollment. With 70 children, and the entire community that we're serving are immigrants that have been in the neighborhood or immigrants that are recently arrived. We have children with special needs. We have children who only speak Spanish. We have children who their parents make it their business to get them there every day. And it just makes no sense that this would be targeted as a site for closure. Yesterday, I met with 20 plus staff from that site to give them notice and to talk about how we're going to fight this, because they're all at risk of losing their jobs by June 30th. We have extended family members, we have vendors, we have other collaborators in that neighborhood who rely on us. A child care center is a crucial part of the community, and kids know this better sometimes than adults. This line says, if you see a classmate having trouble with their art, take time to help and make their day. You have a friendly heart. Mr. Mayor, I know there's a friendly heart in there. You were visiting us, Mayor Adams, last week in our senior center and hung out with our seniors right as we received this information. We know that somewhere in there in your administration, you all understand that this is wrong. And we invite you, and I'm hoping that you can enroll our elected officials to help them. We invite Mayor Adams to come visit each of the 5 centers that they're proposing to close and meet with the families and meet with the staff. And I personally invite you, Mayor Adams, to Grant Street Settlement to do that so that you understand the impact of decisions that are made from folks in your administration that I'm not sure you fully agree with. There are ways to reverse this, and this starts now because of the leadership of advocates and because of your leadership as elected officials. So thank you for that, and let's spend a few minutes together in fellowship. Appreciate you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. And beautiful. This book looks amazing. My First Day, The Grand Street Way. I can't wait to read it and read it to others. And I'll just close with this this last point that Robert made, which I really do think is important as an invitation to the mayor to restore the cuts. You know, people get used to the budget dance, and cuts get made in the preliminary budget, and people think, oh, well, that hopefully, fingers crossed, if we all advocate and organize and fight, will get restored in June. But families can't wait until June to know where they're going to have childcare for next year, and those 20 employees can't wait until June to know whether they're going to have jobs. So this is not part of the budget dance that can get resolved in June. Those 5 centers need to be restored right now. So thank you for making that point, and let's just make sure we invite the mayor to make that clarification. I understand he was asked about Nuestros Niños yesterday. Hopefully today, when he's asked about Nuestros Niños in Grand Street, he'll have the right answer, which is I'm going to go visit all 5 of them and going to let them know that they'll be open next year. So, thank you all. Thank you, Robert, for hosting. Thanks, everyone, very much for being here, and we can take some questions. You know, I have joked before that I thought New Yorkers United for Childcare had already won the mayor's race because the vast majority of candidates running are supporting universal childcare. Unfortunately, these cuts show that that is not true, that, you know, the fact that even as everyone agrees that what we need is an affordability agenda, you're seeing cuts to, you know, over 10,000 childcare slots. So, I mean, Robert is right. This is about the budget, not about the mayor's race. What's necessary is to get this funding restored, and not restored in June when the budget comes online, but gets restored now so those parents know they've got seats, so the providers know they have jobs. I'd like this issue to be taken off the table in the mayor's race as a result of that funding being restored, so the families we're talking about will know they have the affordable child care they need. In the mayor's race, the question should be, how are we going to expand child care options to get to universal child care? That we should not be having a fight about going backwards. Yeah. Yeah, most of what Robert and I talk about is how late the city is in paying the providers.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
You know, come on up and
Really quick, I would say, number one, enrollment is not the issue. And what they're doing is they're doing a 3-year look back. Let us remember that the City Department of Education controls the distribution of enrollment. When we have centers that are federally funded with Head Start, we do the recruitment and the enrollment. They're fully enrolled with waiting lists. So there's a systemic, you know, problem here. That's one. You know, the other thing is about payment. We're currently owed $3.5 million just from the Department of Education. In June of last year, it was $8 million. We've been able to whittle it down. But for a smaller agency that's not been around for 100 years, it doesn't have 37 sites, it would close. And that is what's been happening throughout the city. So what's happening, and you've raised this issue, we're all paying interest for loans to pay our staff while we wait for reimbursement from the city. So what's happening is there's a slow starvation of childcare providers. In some cases, they're accelerating it like they're attempting to do now. But what might be a well-intentioned budgetary issue is not. It's killing providers. There is inaccurate information, I think, that's being put out. And I think that they need to look at this more objectively about how you distribute slots in the city to areas of high need.
I'll just add here, there's a relatively new problem that has developed to make this even bigger. In the past, there were challenges with getting your contract registered, and that's still an issue, but previously, once you got your contract registered, you could submit your invoices and get paid quickly, and that is not taking place right now. Even after people get their contracts registered, which can take 8 or 10 months, then they still say your budget still has to be approved, and even then when you submit your invoices, OMB in many cases has to sign off, and so there's a whole new set of post-contract registration payment delays that have been growing, especially, though not only at the Department of Education. Senator Brisport, thank you for coming today. Yeah.
Thank you.
Brooklyn Borough President. They wanted to get their teams together in a room and get the conversation. If their information was wrong, that the city was open to that. I'm just wondering if that invitation was extended to any of the other child care centers, if he has offered to meet with their teams as well.
For Grand Street settlement, we got a call. We don't have it in writing yet. We've asked for that, and we had to reach out to Deputy Chancellor in order to set up a meeting, which we're going to have. And, you know, we don't have a lot of negotiating position because these are leaseholds that are controlled by the city of New York, right? And we have a landlord that's willing to sign the lease, but the city's not willing to enter into a long-term lease. That's really the crux of the issue.
Any other? Okay, so we're going to.
Thank you guys all very much. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, it's gonna be political.
And now they're gonna ask me.
Hold on, can we get a picture with everybody?
Oh,
with the
yeah,
controller?
go to a picture.
Sorry.
Here, yeah, crowd in here so we can, oh, I'm gonna hold the book up, okay. Maybe both. We'll hold up the report and the book. Yeah, maybe I'll just hold it.
I don't wanna mess this up, but I wanna get everybody.
Okay, oh, yeah, you can take those out of the way. Yeah, yeah. Definitely. All right, yeah, come crowd in here so we can make the picture. Yeah, come on.
Risk of losing her job.
You're
Very emotional.
site. What? Tell me your name again. Nilsa. All right, we're gonna fight for you. All right, we're fighting for Nilsa, everyone, in addition to everybody else. So.
All right, everybody, look over this way. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now here. One more. 3, 2, 1.
Thank you. All right, thanks for the book. Thanks for your work. Nilsa, we got your back. Thank you. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Sandy. Thanks so much. Thank you. What a pleasure to be together with you guys. Sorry, it's under these circumstances. So I'll come back after we win and we'll do a celebration. We'll celebrate. All right, very good. Do you want me just to come? No, it's all good. I mean, yeah. All right, folks, I apologize. We have a. Sorry. Okay. But you need the sound. Sorry. I need to. All right, folks. What do you want to do here, Chloe? Should I try to quiet people down? Thank you.
You were in office in a different office at the start of the first Trump administration. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how different it feels at the start of the second, and then also in addition to what it is or is not doing to help New Yorkers prepare for any of the impact of some of these executive orders, et cetera.
Yes, I mean the last few days have been awful for the last few days have been awful for the country and for the city. This slew of executive orders pardoning the January 6th insurrectionists, not giving a sense that democracy matters, that law enforcement matters. Obviously, the executive orders that would end birthright citizenship